Irina, what have you been called too much of? Can you list it for me, please?
Yeah, I've been too much of a tomboy to be a woman. I've been too well read and cultured to be a woman. I've been too aggressive and competitive to be a woman. I've been too vulgar to be a woman. And I've been too adamant about my own identity to be a woman.
Thank you. And can you tell us some anecdotes about when you were called, when you were called too much or something, and how that made you feel?
Well, yeah, relating me to womanhood in general, I think is a downside to myself. As I think it is a downside for human beings to be called males in general as well. It's not, it's made me feel too much of an individual or too less of an individual. But I've come to realize that both male and female are just etiquette. You can be human. Some people weren't when it came to the way they were labeling this or that, but it makes you feel, it empowers you because they don't actually get to be in touch with what you are, and by so doing they're not really in touch with what they are either, but that shouldn't be important.
And when was the first time you remember being called too much?
I think it was the time when I was called too little. I was called too much of a boy to be a woman. I was 9. I was 9. There was no being male or female back then. I mean, I didn't see it as such. People, I don't know. Back then, there was too much of sexuality for me to be able to understand it as being too much of. I've never interiorized the idea of female or male in that sense. I've been called too much or too little of both forever and ever, and I think it has it has built my identity in a way that could forever expand. If you have a prejudice or if you're built upon a stereotype, that's never gonna expand.
Was there a moment when you realised people calling you too much was more, or implying was more about them than it was about you? I know we briefly talked about that before. And you was it?
There were a lot of times, yeah, a lot of times. I wanted to understand why they're doing it, not necessarily other words were devoid of meaning to me. I wanted to understand how it is possible for them to socialize like that. And I think that coming to explore and research a narrow mind does expand your perspective on how you could actually be better and not fall in the same trap.
Did you ever change or try to change in any way when people called you too much, or did it change you?
I don't think so. I don't think so. The only significant change I've had in the past 12 years was my hair and the fact that I started wearing colors from full-on black that didn't necessarily say anything to exploring colors. And this is exclusively a question of appearance. What changed in a different sense is the fact that if at some point being called too much, too little, or anything, I don't see it as an aggression anymore. I've come to explore them, and through the things I've been told, the way I am perceived, and to be able to tell what should change or what should get better. It's not about fixing. It is about getting better while being humane. I mean by trying to actually understand the mean, the normative, the constructive things that you're being told without actually losing touch with what you are. Because if 3-5 people tell you you're drunk, maybe you are. I mean, if no one gets you and they ask probative questions as to why this, that, or the other, maybe you should consider their train of thoughts too. On the other hand, that train of thoughts shouldn't define you. It can expand you, but you're the one to choose. And I honestly think there's enough room for everybody. Stereotypes take like this little space. Do not get confined in that. And just
And yeah, I've got a question I'm going to ask in a bit, but so it's going on to the superpowers, your favourite part of this project. Well, if you had to think about your too muches, how do you think that they are actually your strengths?
They are my strengths because they've built me into not being a snowflake. I mean, if someone is not politically correct, I will not get offended. I will try to analyze their words and how they use them and why they use them so as to come to an effective dialogue, so to speak. I think adversity makes you better than non-adversity. I don't think it is a superpower. It is a question of context, and of context being ridden with prejudice and stereotypes. That shouldn't bring you down. It shouldn't make you listen to social norms that you find avoided or that you don't understand. You should always transcend that. And it is a superpower because you've been told you are not the norm, which is why you've been given a sense, a taste of what it is to defy the norm. And on a larger scale, society evolves just because some people defy the norms. Regardless if they do it intrinsically, if it comes from the inside, or if they're just shunned at the margin of society because they're seen as others.
Yeah. And what do you love about yourself?
This is a rough question. I love about myself that lately I've come to be very fond of the fact that I am alive. I mean, I think no matter how rough it gets, you should be glad that you're alive. It's something It is a feeling I've never had, and I love it about myself right now.
Amazing. And if someone came to you and they were in their early teens and they said, I've been called all the things that you've been called too much of a tomboy, too much of this to be a woman, too much, everything that you've been called too much of, what would your advice be to them?
To be always too much of themselves and only that, regardless of what other people say. You can only be this much of yourself because you have your own projection on what you are. What others say is and should be irrelevant.
And if you could change the world tomorrow, what would you change and why?
I don't think the world can be changed. I would change money. I would remove it altogether because it has contributed to the way we've separated men and women, caregiving, who has the most. If you look at arranged marriages, I think money were a factor in setting roles for women and men altogether. And I think we could have a different society altogether if you are to remove that factor back in the 200s before Christ, but it's not something doable. It's just a fantasy.